What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video today. We're going to be talking about the projected possible 2022 Daytona 500 entry list. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Keep this in mind, the season technically does not start in 53 days from the time I'm recording this. This is being filmed on December 29th, so it's very, very possible the entry list could possibly change. However, there is a very high possibility, though, that there may not be more than 40 cars that show up for the Daytona 500 this year, but there is a possibility we may see up to 46 cars show up for the Daytona 500 if all these teams show up. However, I'm only expecting possibly up to 40 cars that show up for this year's Daytona 500. So let's jump into this year's entry list. Let's start off with the one car for Trackhouse Racing. This one we know is already going to be showing up for Daytona 500. This car is going to be driven by Ross Chastain. He'll be working with Phil Surgeon, who will be his crew chief for Ross Chastain in 2022. Looking at Ross Chastain's chances of winning the Daytona 500, I think Ross Chastain, if he's not super aggressive, he can make some methodical moves, but isn't too aggressive and cause the big one. I think Ross Chastain absolutely has a very strong shot of winning this year's upcoming Daytona 500. So he's going to be one I think to watch for the Daytona 500. Trackhouse has shown a lot of pace, especially in their qualifying speeds, especially in super speeds, and they've shown a lot of race pace. So I think Ross Chastain has a very strong shot of contending for Daytona 500 victory. Next, we're going to talk about the two car for Team Penske. This one we already know it's going to be driven by the rookie Austin Cindric, who will be jumping up to the Cup Series on a full-time basis in 2022. His crew chief for 2022 is going to be Jeremy Bullins. I believe he also is going to be working with Brad, I think a spotter from the Xfinity, or I think it's Doug Campbell who's going to be working with him in 2022 as well. Be working with them in the NASCAR Cup Series. Austin Cindric, I think, actually in 2022 has a pretty realistic shot of winning Daytona 500. Austin Cindric in Xfinity Series has a really strong Xfinity, as he's won one or two Xfinity Series races on super speed races, including the opening race in 2021 at Daytona, basically kicking off right off to a very strong year in 2021. And I think if cars are put in the table, especially how good Penske has been in the Daytona 500 in the past, I think he could really make a run for the money to win Daytona 500. So I think Austin Cindric has a really strong shot of winning Daytona 500. Next driver we're going to talk about is a 3 car, and this car has already been confirmed. We know he's going to be driving. It's going to be Austin Dillon in 2022. Austin Dillon already has won Daytona 500. He won it in 2018. And Austin Dillon has become a very solid super speed racer. In my opinion, one of the most underrated drivers when it comes to super speedways. So I think that Austin Dillon is going to be a driver that you're going to have to keep your eyes on throughout the 2022 season to see if he can improve off his 2021 stats. But also I think that Austin Dillon is going to be a threat to potentially win the Daytona 500. If he can stay out of trouble, he's won dual races. And like I said, he's won Daytona 500. So I think he's going to be a threat to win Daytona 500 in 2022. Next car we're going to talk about is the 4 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This one we already know. Kevin Harvick will be driving this 4 car in 2022. He'll once again work with Rodney Childers in 2022, and also will work at Team Fiat as a spotter for him in 2022. Kevin Harvick's chances to win Daytona 500 are actually pretty good in my honest opinion. Kevin Harvick, of course, has won the Daytona 500. He won it back in 2007. And I think that Kevin Harvick is absolutely going to be a threat to win Daytona 500 if, of course, he can stay out of the big one and stay out of trouble. Because if he can stay out of the big one and stay out of trouble, I think Kevin Harvick is going to have a really strong shot of winning. So I'm really looking to see what Kevin Harvick can do next year, and he's going to really have a good shot to win the 500. The next driver we're going to talk about and the team we're going to talk about is the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This already know Kyle Larson, the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion, will be returning to this car to once again work with Cliff Dinos, who will be his crew chief, and he'll be also working with Tyler Bond, who will be a spotter for him in 2022 as well. Kyle Larson has not historically been amazing at super speedways. However, Kyle Larson has actually been pretty good in the Daytona 500. His only couple top 10 super speedway finishes have come, of course, at Daytona National Speedway in the Daytona 500. So if Kyle Larson can have good luck, hit him in 2022 in the Daytona 500, I think he will have a very strong shot of winning next year's Daytona 500. So I think he's got a really good shot of winning it, but he's got to survive the big one. If he could do that and get to the finish line and be there at the end, I think if Hendrick Power comes into play, I know all the Hendrick cars are still in the play, I think Kyle Larson has a very strong shot of winning Daytona 500 in 2022. The next team we're going to talk about is the 6 car. Now, this technically is a new team, but it really isn't a new team. Brad Keselowski is moving away from Team Penske, and he'll be going to Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing in 2022, where he'll be a co-owner / driver of this organization in 2022. Brad Keselowski, in my opinion, I think he has a very realistic shot of winning Daytona 500 in 2022. The Roush cars have been generally fast. I remember before Ryan Newman had his really bad accident, Ryan Newman was a threat to win a Daytona 500 in 2020. And Chris Buescher has also shown a lot of pace on super speedways as well. So I think that Brad Keselowski has a really good shot at winning the 500. He's beginning a new team in 2022, and I think he could win the Daytona 500 2022 with RFK Racing, his new team, in 2022. The next team we're going to talk about is the 7th team, and we're going to be talking about Spire Motorsports. And this one we already know. This is going to be Corey Lejoy, who is going to be driving for this team in 2022. He'll be working with Ryan Sparks, and also I don't remember who his spotter is going to be, but he'll be working with Ryan Sparks, who will be his spotter for him in 2022. I think Corey Lejoy is an underdog to win Daytona 500 because Corey Lejoy has been really, really strong at super speedway tracks. And I think that he's a driver that a lot of drivers are going to be relying on to potentially work with him to go out there and try to win the Daytona 500 in 2022. So I think he's got a really, really good shot of getting it done in 2022. Would not surprise if he gets it done. And watch out for Corey Lejoy in 2022. The next team we're going to talk about is the A team. We already know who's going to be in this car next year. This is going to be Tyler Reddick, who will continue driving the A car for Rich Schultz Racing in 2022. Tyler Reddick's an interesting case when it comes to Daytona 500 because I'm not sure if he's going to be a threat or not to win the Daytona 500 2022. As because Tyler Reddick has at points been up front of super speedways, but also has been involved in a lot of wrecks in super speedways, so we really don't know how good he's going to be. Now, he does have an Xfinity Series win, of course, in 2000. He's won an Xfinity Series race at Talladega in 2019 when he went on to get his second Xfinity Series championship in a row. So he does have that going for him. If he can survive the big one and can basically get to the end of the race, I think he has a clear shot of winning, but that's really dependent on if he can make it to the end of the race and not get involved in the big one. The next team we're going to talk about is the 9th team for Hendrick Motorsports. We already know the driver is going to be for this car. That, of course, is going to be Chase Elliott. I think Chase Elliott, realistically, is a guy that's looking to try to get, of course, Chase Elliott is a driver that's won a NASCAR Cup Series championship in 2020. He'll be working with the same people who's worked it for many, many years in the Cup Series, and he'll be trying to win his first ever Daytona 500. Now, Chase Elliott has been really, really strong at super speedway tracks throughout his entire career. And on top of that, Chase Elliott was very, very close to winning the 2021 Daytona 500. Had that big fire and wreck not happen, and basically they waited till the checker flag flew, I think Chase Elliott passes Michael McDowell to win his first ever Daytona 500. But I think Chase Elliott realistically has a very strong shot of winning Daytona 500, and that is, of course, if he can make it through the big one. If he makes it through the big one, I think he realistically has a shot at winning Daytona 500, and I think he's going to be really strong in the 500 next year. The next team we're going to talk about is the 10 team for Stewart-Haas Racing. This one we already know will be at the track. This car once again be driven by Aric Almirola, who'll be working with the same team once again in 2022. Realistically, I think Aric Almirola is going to be looking for redemption after 2018. I know it's been 4 or 5 Daytona 500s since 2018 when he got turned by Austin Dillon for the victory. But Aric Almirola is going to be looking for redemption. Now, Aric Almirola is a pretty great super speed racer. 2 of his 3 career NASCAR Cup Series victories have been on, you guessed it, super speedways. So I think that's going to come into play next year in 2022. And I think he's got a really, really strong shot of getting it done. It would not surprise me if he kicks off the year after a really frustrating 2021. It would not surprise me if Aric Almirola contends for the overall victory in the Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team we're going to talk about is the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. We already know this. Who's going to be in this car next year? It's going to be Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin's coming off a very strong season in 2021, basically being arguably the second best driver in the Cup Series in 2021. And Denny Hamlin, of course, is a 3-time Daytona 500 winner, winning it in 2016, 2019, and winning it in 2020 as well. Denny Hamlin is trying to become, I think, only the second driver, I think the second or third driver to win 4 Daytona 500s in their NASCAR Cup Series careers. And I think Denny Hamlin is going to be going into next year being the favorite to win the Daytona 500 just because of the fact that Denny Hamlin has been extremely strong in the Daytona 500. I think realistically, Denny Hamlin has a really strong shot of getting it done. Would not surprise me if Denny Hamlin gets it done in the 500 next year. I think he's got a good shot of getting it done. The next driver we're going to talk about is the driver of the 12th car for Team Penske, and that is going to be Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney's going to have a new crew chief next year. He'll be working with Jonathan Hasker, who will work with Matt DiBenedetto for the second half of the 2022 season. Now, Ryan Blaney, I think, is absolutely going to be very, very strong next year. As a matter of fact, I think he's actually my pick to win the Daytona 500 in 2022. And the reason I'm picking him to win the Daytona 500 is Ryan Blaney has been historically really, really strong at super speedways. He's got 3 career super speedway wins, 2 of them coming at Talladega, both of those in 2019 and 2020, and winning at Daytona in 2021. So I think realistically, I think that he is going to win the Daytona 500 in 2022. Plus, he's been super close to winning Daytona 500 for multiple years. Almost won in 2017, 2018. Almost won it in a photo finish against Timmy Hill in 2020. So I think Ryan Blaney is going to get it done, and I think he'll be fast to win. But he's my pick to win. When we get the picks, he's going to be my pick to win the 500. The next team we're going to talk about is the 13 car for Nba Motorsports. Now, this ride, in my opinion, is one that's a little bit of a question mark right now. I'm going to say that this one's 50-50 right now because Nba Motorsports, I think, could potentially bring a second car to Daytona 500. But one reason I think they may not show up is because of the fact that they may not end up having enough parts and pieces because of the next-gen car, because of the supply issues. But if they do show up the Daytona 500 next year, I think that they are going to bring Garrett Smithley to the Daytona 500 to attempt to make the Daytona 500 once again. Garrett Smithley drove this car last year, almost made the Daytona 500, barely missed out on making it. So I think that they're going to want to get redemption, and I think they're going to try to get Garrett Smithley to be the driver for this car in 2022 for the Daytona 500. The next team we're going to talk about is the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This one's already confirmed. Chase Briscoe will be back with this team in 2022. And he's going to have a new major sponsor to be working with next year, as he'll be working with Mahindra Tractors in 2022. Now, Chase Briscoe is not one driver that I think is going to be one to watch in the Daytona 500. Just because Chase Briscoe has been involved in a lot of races, especially where there's been a lot of big ones and big wrecks. And unfortunately, he's never really had a great finish on super speedways in the NASCAR Cup Series. I don't think Chase Briscoe is going to have a great Daytona 500. I think his season next year overall throughout the year is going to be good, but I think he's going to struggle on the super speedway tracks. Even his teammates, I think his teammates are going to do well. I don't think that Chase Briscoe is going to do well, and I don't think he does well enough to do well in the 500. Next team we're going to talk about is the 15 car for Reddick Racing. This car has been confirmed for the 500, but the driver has not been confirmed for the Daytona 500. Now, there's been a lot of speculation of who this potentially could be in the Daytona 500. I think the driver of this 15 car, at least for the 500s, I think this car could be a rotation driver team, but also could be one driver taking over. I think it's going to be Josh Bilicki who's going to be in this car. And the reason is there was a photo that recently surfaced, I think about a month ago, showing that it was 15 car, had the number placed in Ford. I know it was a Gen 6 car, but it had the number placed in Ford, and now it was a 15 car, and Josh Bilicki was the driver's name on the door. So I think it's going to be Josh Bilicki who's going to be in this 15 car for the Daytona 500. Again, nothing is confirmed from the Reddick Racing camp, but I think that Josh Bilicki will be in the 15 car for the Daytona 500 next year. Next car we're going to talk about is a 16 car for Kaulig Racing. Now, we know that there are going to be multiple drivers are going to be rotating this car. No, Grayson's not going to be in his car for the 500 because he's going to be with another team that we're going to talk about here later in this episode. And there's 2 drivers that I think could be in this car. Of course, that's potentially going to come down between Daniel Hamrick and AJ Allmendinger. I think the driver of the 16 car for the Daytona 500 is going to be Daniel Hamrick. AJ has said in the past that he's not overall a major fan of super speedways. So I think that Daniel Hamrick is going to get in the 16 car for the Daytona 500 and will be able to race his second Daytona 500. Plus, Daniel Hamrick, I think, is a pretty solid super speedway racer. I think he's going to show a lot in the Daytona 500. So I think that they're going to show up to the 500 for sure, and I think that Daniel Hamrick will be in the 16 car for the Daytona 500 in 2022. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 17 car for Roush Fenway Racing. This one's already confirmed. Chris Buescher will be driving this car in 2022 in the Daytona 500 and throughout the entire season. He'll be working once again with Scott Graves, who basically is going to be working for the first time, I think, since the beginning of his career, basically since his time at Xfinity. He'll be once again working with Scott Graves in 2022. Chris Buescher, in my opinion, when it comes to the possibilities and stocks of him potentially winning the Daytona 500, I would throw some stocks in for Chris Buescher as an underdog to win the 500. Chris Buescher has been exceptionally well at super speedways, has ran up front, has led last before he got unfortunately DNQ'd from the race. Basically, unfortunately, got disqualified from the race. He finished second before they basically disqualified him. So I think that Chris Buescher realistically has a very strong possibility of winning Daytona 500, and for us having Brad Keselowski, who's a really solid super speedway racer, coming to work with him next year, I think that's really going to help Chris Buescher out in 2022. So we're going to have to keep an eye on him in 2022, but I think Chris Buescher will be a threat to win the Daytona 500 next year. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one we already know. This car is going to be driven by Kyle Busch in 2022. Where knows this is going to be the last season that Mars Incorporated is going to be sponsoring throughout the 2022 season. So Kyle Busch will be looking to try to win his first Daytona 500. Kyle Busch, of course, is a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. He won the 2015 championship and won the 2019 championship. What Kyle Busch is looking for at this point is looking to close out an incredible career by closing out by winning the last major race he needs to win for, because he's won the other 3 major races. He's looking to try to finally encapsulate his career by winning the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch, if he can survive and have good luck, I think he's got a shot to win. But unfortunately, Kyle Busch has really never had good luck in the Daytona 500. But if he can survive the big one and not have any issues, I think that Kyle Busch will be an overall a threat to win the Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one's already confirmed. Mark Trixner will be back in this 19 car in 2022. Who once going to be working with James Small and also be working with the spotter. I think it's Drew Herring who'll be working with them once again in 2022 as well. Mark Truex Jr. has been pretty hit or miss on super speedways throughout his career. He actually has been involved in almost winning a Daytona 500. He won it in 2016, almost won in 2016 Daytona 500 against Denny Hamlin, but Denny Hamlin unfortunately beat him in a photo finish. But one thing that Mark Truex Jr. does not have going for him is that his recent finishes at super speedways have not been really, really great. So I don't think that he's going to be a threat to win Daytona 500, but I think if he can survive the big one, he could be an underdog to win, but his luck in super speedways has not been promising, so I'm not really expecting much from Mark Truex Jr. in the Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 20 team for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one we already know. Christopher will be continuing to drive this 20 car in 2022. While crew chief has not been announced for the team, I think Adam Stevens is going to be back working with him in 2022. And his spotter, which I think is Stevie Reeves, if I remember correctly, will once again be working with him in 2022 as well. Christopher, I think, is a driver that's very interesting, because Christopher ran extremely well at Talladega. And I think that Xfinity Series race he ran at Daytona really helped his skills on super speedways. So if Christopher Bell doesn't cause a big one like he did in Daytona 500 2021, I can see Christopher Bell making a run at potentially trying to win the Daytona 500. But honestly, I'm not going to keep my hopes high for Christopher Bell, but watch for him, because he honestly could surprise a lot of people, and maybe he'll surprise and win the Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 21 car for Wood Brothers. This one's already been confirmed. It'll be driven by Harrison Burton, a rookie, in 2022. He'll have Brian Wilson who will be working with them in 2022 as well. When I think of Harrison Burton, I think Harrison Burton is a driver that is pretty decent at super speedways from his Xfinity Series days. However, I don't know if that's going to transfer over to the NASCAR Cup Series. So the Cup Series is a much more wilder beast compared to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, especially with the lengths of the Daytona 500, which is 200 laps, compared to Xfinity Series race, which I believe is 120 laps, 113 laps. So it's not really a long race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. It's basically only 60% compared to what the NASCAR Cup Series has. So I'm not sure Harrison Burton is going to be a threat in the Daytona 500 in 2022. But if he can survive the big one and not have problems, you really never know. I think he's got a good shot of contending. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 22 team for Team Penske. This one's already been confirmed. Joey Logano will continue driving this 22 car in 2022. Now, Joey Logano has won the Daytona 500. He won it in 2015. And I think he's been really, really great at super speedways throughout his career. Now, of course, he only has one win at Daytona, that, of course, being the Daytona 500. I think, realistically, Joey Logano has a pretty decent shot of winning Daytona 500 again if 2022. He's arguably had the fastest car the last couple of years. It's just going to be, can he not basically cause a big one in Daytona 500 like he did in 2021, because he almost won the 500 in 2021. If he can do that, he could potentially get Team Penske their third ever Daytona 500, because he only got 2 Daytona 500s right now. That's what they'll be looking for to do in 2022. Hopefully, Joey Logano can provide that in 2022. The next team of driver we're going to talk about is a 23 team for 23XI Racing. We already know the driver. That's going to be Bubba Wallace in 2022. What's going to be working with Booty Barker in 2022, and Freddie Kraft as a spotter for him in 2022 as well. Bubba Wallace, I think, absolutely has a very strong possibility of winning the Daytona 500 next year. It seemed like in the race for Daytona 500, before they had the tire go loose and the loose wheel and the flat tire, they were in contention to win the 500, and they showed a lot of pace and a lot of speed. And I believe I don't think they won a stage, but they actually got their only super speedway, their only career win so far at Talladega, a super speedway, albeit it was a rain-shortened race. But Bubba Wallace was able to win that event and pick up his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory. And at Daytona previously, he was really, really fast in that event. So I think that Bubba Wallace realistically has a very strong chance of winning the Daytona 500 2022 if he doesn't run any problems. But if he does, he may end up wrecking. But let's be for real, I think Bubba Wallace realistically could win the Daytona 500 in 2022 if he doesn't run into problems and people work with him and the Twitter group works with them in 2022. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. William Byron will be returning to the 24 car in 2022. But there are changes coming for the 2014 and 2022, as there's going to be a new spotter for him in 2022. He'll, of course, be working with his crew chief, Rudy Fuel, in 2022, but he'll be working with Brandon Lyons in 2022, who was a spotter for the 37 car that was driven by Ryan Preece. I think William Byron will be very fast in qualifying. I think all the Hendrick cars are going to show a lot of speed in qualifying. But I also think that William Byron, if he can survive the big one and not run into problems, any trouble, I think that William Byron has a strong shot in case of winning the Daytona 500 in 2022. But that's going to be if, of course, he can miss the big one, because he's not always been really, really great and known to miss big ones. Except he has one career win, well, two career wins, but one of those, of course, have come in Daytona in the fall in 2020. So I think that he's got a good shot of winning it if he misses the big one. The next team we're going to talk about is the 2017 for Team Hesburgh. Now, Team Hesburgh, this one is also a very, very big question mark as well, because honestly, I think it's 50-50 if they're going to show up for a Daytona 500 as well. We know that they are going to be showing up for the season on the road courses and potentially the short tracks as well. But they've not thrown out the possibility of maybe running Daytona 500 as well. So I'm going to say they're 50-50 of them showing up. I think they realistically could run the Daytona 500. They probably could run it just because of the fact that they're going to need money next year. And I think that they will have Larice Hasemans, of course, who will be the main driver most of the year. They're going to have Jacques Villeneuve drive his car at points in 2022. But I think that next year, Larice Hasemans, if they do run the 500, they'll be driven by Larice Hasemans, and I think that they have a chance to run the Daytona 500, but honestly, it's a little bit of a mystery if they will run the 500 next year. Next team we're going to talk about is the 31 team for Cog Racing. This one's already confirmed. Just Haley will be driving this 31 car in 2022. Just Haley, I think, in my opinion, is a very underrated super speedway racer, and I think it all transfers from his days in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Justin Haley has won 4 of all of his career wins in the NASCAR Xfinity Series have come on super speedways at Daytona and Talladega as well. And I think that mentality, the same mentality, is going to be said about the 31 car. He, in my opinion, is an underdog to win the 500, and of course his only career win, albeit it was a rain-shortened, a lightning-shortened race, he was able to win his only career Cup Series race at Daytona 2019 for Spire Motorsports. So I think that Justin Haley has a realistic chance of winning if he can survive the big one. I think he's an underdog to win the 500 next year. Next team we're going to talk about is the 34 team for Front Row Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. Michael Mcdowell will be driving a 34 car in 2022. We know that Clayton Hughes will also be the spotter for him in 2022 as well. What we do not know right now is who's going to be the crew chief, because Drew Blickensderfer is not going to be the crew chief for him in 2022. Michael Mcdowell, no doubt, they'll go into him. I think, of course, coming this year as the defending Daytona 500 winner, winning Daytona 500 in 2021. I think, realistically, Michael Mcdowell could have a really strong shot of going back-to-back in the Daytona 500. He's a really, really great super speed racer. He almost won a Talladega later in the year as well in the spring. And I think Michael Mcdowell will 100% make a run for his money. So keep an eye on Michael Mcdowell, because I think he's got a good shot of contending for the Daytona 500 in 2022. The next team we're going to talk about is the 36 team for Front Row Motorsports. I'll say this right now. I think there's a 1/3 shot of this ride showing up for Daytona 500. Just because of the next-gen chain supply, I don't know if Front Row Motorsports is going to have enough inventory to run a third car for the Daytona 500. However, like I said, there is a possibility that they could show up for the Daytona 500. And if they do show up for the Daytona 500, I think they bring David Reagan back to this 36 car in 2022. And I think it's realistically, there's a shot it could happen, but honestly, I'm keeping fingers crossed that it happens. I'd like to see his car show up for the 500, but I think there's a possibility, at least for next year, there may not be them showing up. But if they do show up for the 500, I think they bring David Reagan in for the one-off in 2022. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 38 team for Front Row Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. Todd Gilman will be moving all the way up from the Truck Series and be jumping up to the Cup Series in 2022. Todd Gillen has been pretty decent at Super Speedways and trucks. However, let's be for real, he's also been involved in a lot of big ones at Super Speedways, so he's shown a lot of speed with the RFK or whatever engines they're going to be running in 2022. Todd Gillen's one that it could be one that surprised a lot of people, but I'm not really putting my expectations and eggs in his basket for 2022 just because of the fact that Todd Gillen does not have as much super speedway experience. So I'm going to say Todd Gillen is a little bit iffy, but if he can survive the big one, he could have a shot, but it's really good to see that he's jumping up to the Cup Series next year as an Nascar Cup Series rookie. Keep an eye out for him in 2022 to see what he does throughout the year, but I don't think he's going to have a good shot of winning the 500. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. This we already know and it's already been confirmed. Cole Custer will be driving his 41 car once again in 2022. And of course, Mike Shipley, and I don't remember who's crew chief, who's spotters for next year, but he'll have Mike Shipley working with him in 2022 as well. Cole Custer is a driver that may surprise a lot of people because he actually has some decent stats at super speedways. However, his 2021 season was very, very disappointing. And I think he's going to need to have a really, really good season. SHR could bring a lot of pace. He could contend for the 500, but honestly, my stocks are not very high in the Cole Custer train. So I'm not expecting him to run extremely well in the 500. I don't think he's going to do well enough to have a shot to win. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards for Cole Custer for 2022. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is a 42 car for Petty GMS Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. Todd Gillen will be driving the 42 for Petty GMS Motorsports, basically technically a new team and a merger team for 2022 as well. Jeremy Donnelly, who was the engineer at Chip Ganassi Racing with them shutting down, he will be going to crew chief for Todd Gillen in 2022 as well. And I believe also his spotter, his old spotter that worked with the McDowell Bros Racing, Chris Monez, will be spotting for him in 2022 as well. A lot of controversy on Chris Monez, by the way. Todd Gillen, I think, honestly, I know a lot of people are underestimating him because he's actually a really, really good super speedway racer. He's contended for victories in super speedways. He almost won in 2017, his rookie year at Daytona. Got beat by Ricky Santos Jr. at the end of the day, but he almost won at Daytona in July in 2017. So keep an eye on Todd Gillen, the Daytona 500. I think he can fare very, very well at a new team, and we can see this team surprise a lot of people, and they could honestly surprise and win the Daytona 500 2022. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. Next team we're going to talk about is the 43 team, and this, of course, we already know who's going to be driving this car. That is going to be Erik Jones, who's returning to the 43 car in 2022. But he's going to have a new crew chief in 2022, as he's going to be working next year with Dave Ellens, who was a former crew chief for Junior Motorsports, and Noah Gragson. I think that Erik Jones realistically could be one of the biggest underdogs, if not the biggest underdogs, to contend for the Daytona 500 win. Erik Jones is a really, really good super speedway racer. I've looked up a lot of his stats, and his stats are really surprisingly good. So I think that he has a very strong case and a really strong shot of overall possibly contending for the victory in the Daytona 500. So I'd keep your eyes on Erik Jones for 2022 to possibly win the Daytona 500, but we'll have to wait and see what happens if he does do well enough in the 500. The next team we're going to overall talk about is NY Racing. Now, NY Racing, I'm going to say that this is very, very unlikely. They always seem to tease every year, but you really never know. We've been seeing a lot of surprises. But I don't expect them to show up for the 500, but I'm going to say that they're a possibility if miracles fly. Honestly, I think there's a chance they could show up, but honestly, I'm not entirely sure. If they do show up, however, the Daytona 500, I think they'll choose J.J. Yeley to run the Daytona 500 for them, since J.J. Yeley has had a lot of experience with this team in the past and drove for them in 2018 at Charlotte. If they do show up, I think that they're going to choose J.J. Yeley to run the Daytona 500. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that, but if they show up, I think J.J. Yeley will be the driver. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 45 team for 2311 Racing. This one's already been confirmed. Kurt Busch will be driving the 45 car in 2022 as he moves away from Chip Ganassi Racing as they're shutting down. He is moving into the illustrious 45 car in 2022. On top of that, he'll be working Billy Scott in 2022, and also will have Jason Jarrett, son of Dale Jarrett, working for him as a spotter in 2022. Kurt Busch, of course, has already won a Daytona 500. He won it back in 2017. And I think that Kurt Busch, if 2311 has a lot of good motors, I think he'll be a threat to win the 500. I think he's a really good super speed racer, showed a lot of speed in a lot of races in 2021 and 2020 with Chip Ganassi Racing. Chip Ganassi put a lot of their motors and a lot of their stock in their super speedway program. And I think that Kurt Busch will play a big factor in helping the team in 2022. I think Kurt Busch realistically has a good shot of winning Daytona 500 in 2022. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 47 car for JCG Doherty Racing. This one's already been confirmed. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be driving the 47 car for JCG Doherty Racing in 2022. And he'll also have a new spotter next year, as Tab Boy will be working with him in 2022, as Tab Boy transfers over from Hendrick over to JTG in 2022. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., if he doesn't cause a big one and isn't too aggressive, he could have a shot to win. He's a really great super speedway racer, has been very, very fast, and I think he's an underdog to win the 500 in 2022 as well. Like I said, if he doesn't make a mistake and doesn't create stupidity, I think he will be a threat to overall win the 500 in 2022. So keep your eyes on Ricky Stenhouse Jr., because I think he could be a driver that surprises a lot of people in the 500 next year. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 48 team for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. Alex Bowman will be back in the 48 car in 2022. With some new colors, by the way, as they transfer from the purple and black background over to the white background in 2022. Now, Alex Bowman, his super speedway career is very hot or cold. He can either run up front and contend for wins or end up getting involved in a big one. So, who really knows what's going to happen to Alex Bowman in 2022 in the Daytona 500? But I've expected him to be qualifying well. That 48 car has shown a lot of pace in their qualifying speed, so I think he'll qualify well in the 500. But the big question is, will he show up and do well enough in the 500 and survive the big one? That's going to be the biggest question that concludes at the 500. Next team we're going to talk about is the 50 car for the Money Team. The Money Team, honestly, I'm also saying that this is a very low possibility. I think there's probably a 10 to 15% chance that this team shows up for the Daytona 500. I know that they say, oh, we're going to show up to the 500. We're just waiting for the next-gen car, which they could show up to the 500. I've seen crazier things, and teams have shown up to the 500, but I'm going to be perfectly honest and generous. I do not believe that this team will show up for the 500, but if they do show up for the 500, I think, I'm going to throw them in there, Jeff Earnhardt, I think, will be the driver. I think Jeff Earnhardt is a name that always clicks, in my opinion, that could possibly show up for the 500. So keep an eye on this team. They may show up, but honestly, I'm not very confident that they will show up for the Daytona 500 in 2022. The next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing. There's been no confirmation on the driver. We know that there are going to be 2 cars for the Rick Ware Racing camp in 2022. However, I think that the driver with this 51 car is going to be the son of Rick Ware, Cody Ware. Cody Ware has been basically, I think, told David Land, a couple months ago at Nashville that he said he was really only right now focusing on potentially running NASCAR. He's basically backing away from IndyCar, and he's basically backing away from doing IMSA. He's going to try to focus on NASCAR. So I think that he will probably be the driver of this 51 car. He also could be a rotation of multiple drivers, including maybe Ryan Newman, who could get in this ride. But honestly, I think it'll be a rotation team, but I think that Cody Ware is going to be the driver, at least in Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team we're going to talk about is the 62 team for Beard Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. Noah Gragson will be attempting to qualify for his first ever NASCAR Cup Series race in the Daytona 500 in 2022. He actually almost made the Daytona 500 in 2021 before getting wrecked out after Garrett Smithley made a really, really desperate move to try to make the Daytona 500. He will be attempting to qualify for the Daytona 500 once again in 2022. If Noah Gragson makes the Daytona 500, if he's able to make it with the 62 team, I would definitely throw him in a potential underdog to win the 500. Noah Gragson, excellent super speed racer. Won a Daytona in 2019. Well, was it 2019 or 2020? I think it was 2020, excuse me, where he won the Xfinity Series race in 2020 at Daytona. And I think he's going to be a threat to win. I think he's going to have a lot of pace. I think he's going to have a lot of speed if he makes the 500. But, of course, that's in turn, if he makes the 500, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But he'll drive the 62 car in the Daytona 500. The next team we're going to talk about is the 66 car for Nba Motorsports. Unlike the 13 car, we know the 66 car is going to be showing up in 2022 and for sure at the Daytona 500. We possibly are going to expect that Boris said will be in the 66 car for the road course races if sponsorship comes through. But I think the driver of the 66 for the Daytona 500 is going to be Timmy Hill. Timmy Hill has attempted to qualify for Daytona 500 many, many times, and I think that Timmy Hill will be the driver of the 66 car. He's been driving for NBM for many, many years. I can remember him being at NBM, I think, since all the way back in like 2016 and 2017. He's been with the team for a very, very long time. So I think that they are going to show up to attempt the Daytona 500, and I think Timmy Hill is going to be officially the driver of the 66 car in the Daytona 500 in 2022. Next team we're going to talk about is the 71 for Tommy Baldwin Racing. Tommy Baldwin Racing is very unlikely. I'm going to say also like Money Team and NY Racing, there's probably a 10 to 15% chance that they show up for the Daytona 500. Because I'm not sure if they have a chassis or not, and they have not attempted to race in NASCAR, I think, since 2009. I think since 2020. I think they attempted to qualify for the 2020 Daytona 500 with Ryan Truex, but I don't entirely remember if that was the case. But it's been a few years since they have attempted. Well, they actually ran in 2020 with Josh Blicky a couple times, so there you go. But I think if they do run the 500, if they do, I think that they're going to go with Ryan Truex. Ryan Truex, the driver, has driven for Tommy Baldwin Racing. He's been associated with the team in the past, so I think if they show up for the 500, I think it would be driven by Ryan Truex, but honestly, I'm not going to say it's realistically possible that they will show up. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. The next team we're going to talk about is the 77 for Spire Motorsports. This number has already been confirmed. They're already going to be getting a second charter for 2022. The question is, who is going to be the drivers? Honestly, I think there's multiple drivers that it could end up being. I think people throw in Matt DiBenedetto. Everyone wants to know where Matt DiBenedetto is going to go. I think he's got a good shot at getting in this ride, but I don't know if Matty D is going to end up in it, but keep an eye on him because he could potentially get in this ride. Kaz Grala. Kaz Grala tested the 00 for Starcom Racing because we thought Starcom Racing could possibly run a part-time status in 2022. We know they're not going to be back in 2022. Kaz Grala could be the driver. But I think the driver of the 77 for the Daytona 500 is probably going to be Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece basically said he's got an announcement coming very, very soon in regards to his future plans. And I think that Spire Motorsports is going to be the team that he ends up going to in 2022. I think it's going to be really, really soon that we know about those plans. And I think he'll be the driver in the Daytona 500. But also could be Kaz Grala. Could also be Jamie McMurray. Jamie McMurray could also end up being the driver in 2022. So keep an eye on this team because I think there's going to be an announcement here in the coming weeks. Next team and driver we're going to talk about is the 78 team for Live Fast Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. BJ McLeod will be driving a 78 car in the Daytona 500. Realistically, BJ McLeod's only top 10, I think, came in at Super Speedway in 2021. So who really knows at this point? Did they get a top 10? I don't entirely remember. But BJ McLeod Motorsports, Live Fast Motorsports, I think they're going to improve next year. I don't think they're going to attempt for the 500, but I think they'll improve in 2022 and show a little more pace and show a little bit more skills in 2022. So I think BJ McLeod will have something to go for. I think that he's not going to run every single race in 2022. I expect him to do something very similar to what they did in 2021. So we'll have to keep an eye on his team, but they will attempt the Daytona 500 on a full-time basis with the charter in 2022. The next team we're going to talk about is the 96 team for Gaunt Brothers Racing. This team is 50, according to multiple reports. They're kind of 50-50 right now. However, I do feel like that they're going to show up for the Daytona 500. And I think the driver they're going to choose for the Daytona 500 is going to be Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones has been in the Toyota stable for a very, very long time. And I originally thought with Daniel Hemrick still in Joe Gibbs Racing, as I thought he was going to return to Joe Gibbs Racing, I thought they'd go with him. But honestly, I think Brandon Jones is going to get Cup starts in 2022. And I think that's going to come with Gaunt Brothers Racing. Brandon Jones, pretty decent super speed racer, actually. Has shown a lot of pace in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, so they're going to have, because they're going to have to attempt to qualify for the 500, but I think if they go into 500, I think they're going to choose Brandon Jones in 2022. And finally, the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. This one's already been confirmed. Daniel Suarez will be back in the number 99 car in 2022. Daniel Suarez, will be the 99. I want to say Daniel Hamrick. Daniel Suarez will be in the 99 car in 2022. Daniel Suarez, I think, could be an underdog to win the 500 if he doesn't get involved in any big ones. He's unfortunately had a lot of bad luck when it comes to getting involved in big ones. So if he can survive the big one, he won't have any problems. But I think his team will improve in 2022. I think that Daniel Suarez has a realistic chance of winning the Daytona 500, but keep an eye on it for 2022. So, anyway, that is it for today's 2022 possible entry list video for 2022. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Let's get over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. How many entries do you think are going to show up for the Daytona 500? I think many of these entries I mentioned, some of the low limited teams, they're probably not going to show up. And honestly, let me know what you think and possible entries that will be showing up for Daytona 500 2022. Let me know in the comments below. We're really close to the end of 2022. I think I'll have at least 1 or 2 more videos that are going to be coming out for 2022. So stick around because there might be a few more videos coming out very, very soon. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.